Hey guys, welcome to Making It Fun with Michael Miller Fabrics. My name is Heidi and today we are going to be making journal covers and drawstring bags that we will use as a dice bag. So let's get started. All right, so for today's project, we are going to be using the Mystic Dragon collection from Michael Miller Fabrics. This is part of the September release. It will be in stores early spring next year. So if you love this collection, make sure you tell your shops that you would like them to order Mystic Dragons from Michael Miller Fabrics. And if you're a shop, hop on over and talk to your rep at Michael Miller Fabrics. So with the theme of dragons, I started thinking about what would be some fun and easy projects for us to work on. These projects will be perfect for yourself or for gifts for others as we're getting into the gift giving season. I have thought about that as well for some of these sewing projects. So the first thing we're going to make today is a dice bag. This is a beautiful little drawstring bag. I've got a slide on there that opens up, and then you can see inside, and then this is where you can keep all of your game dice. You could keep other treasures in here. You can create little pockets inside and use it as a jewelry bag, but it is a nice, easy to make drawstring bag. And next up, we will be doing a very simple and easy journal cover that you can use on any notebook. I'm going to show you how to measure your notebook and figure out how big to cut your pieces. So that'll be the second project in the video. So let's get making. All right, let's get started with the drawstring bag. Let me tell you what you're going to need to make your very own adorable bag. First, you're going to need a 5-inch circle template, which I have linked below, a PDF that you could print and cut out. This will be the base of the bag. Once you've cut out that, you will also need lining fabric, outer fabric, and you're going to need a lightweight fusible interfacing. We will be using heat and bond fusible interfacing in the lightweight. So you will need to cut out your outer fabric, your lining, and one piece of the fusible interfacing. We're going to add the interfacing into this. It's very light and drapey, but what it'll do is it'll help the bag stand upright and not just kind of slouch and fall down. It just adds some more body to the whole piece and makes it feel a little more sturdy and structured. Then you will need to cut a 7 by 15 1/4 inch strip from the outer bag, from the lining, and then again from the fusible interfacing there. For the drawstring, you will need a 24-inch piece of cording. I'm using a satin black rat tail cord, but you can use any kind of string that you want, or you could even make one out of another coordinating piece of fabric and fold it up to make a 1/4 inch wide drawstring if you so choose. So that's the drawstring. I also have a slide release lock mechanism. This will help me draw the cord up tight to the bag, and we don't have to just rely on the strings, and I will show you how to assemble that and put that on. I also like to use a safety pin to pull the cord through the channel. I like these diaper safety pins because they're fat and smooth on the end and they kind of glide through, but any safety pin will work for that. I'm going to show you a trick with Elmer's washout school glue, so if you have a stick of that laying around, go grab that. And as always, we need a marking pen. This is the bow and chalk pencil that we'll use if we need to mark anything while we make our bag. So now that we've gathered all of our supplies, let's get into the assembly. The first step is to take the fusible interfacing, put fusible side down onto your fabric. This is going to go on the outer fabric, not the lining. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to iron the fusible interfacing to the back of the fabric to get those pieces ready to sew. Quick tip when you're doing a very lightweight fusible interfacing, put that on the bottom, put your fabric on the top, and iron through the fabric to the interfacing. Otherwise, if your iron is too hot, it will cause the interfacing kind of curl up and ball up, and that defeats the whole purpose. So there's a quick tip for you. Now that we have our two pieces together, we need to fold the sides in half, right sides together, and we're going to stitch down each side to create a tube. We've sewn these into tubes, and you can go over and press this seam open, or you can just finger press it however you want to do it. We're just going to finger press it for the camera's sake. All right, so now that we have sewn the tubes, we are ready to glue the bottom on to the side, and I use a glue stick to do this. Now you can just clip it with Wonder Clips, but I find when you get to the sewing machine to sew it, the clips kind of get in the way and you're constantly having to move them out. So if you can actually just go ahead and glue the two pieces together, this will do all the hold for you. And then when you get over there, you just have to sew it down and it's nice and easy. So I only work in small sections, and I put a little bit of glue on and I line everything up and I press it in place. As you can see, I'm always working with the circle on the bottom and I'm pulling the side up to the edges and aligning them. The circle is a little less stretchy than the side, so it gives you a little more control. But if you do it this way, it's a little easier to align your edges. This also will let you know if you need to make your seam a little smaller or bigger, if your sides don't quite line up. You know, there's a little bit of fiddling when you're doing a base to a side. Now, for some reason, probably because I'm on camera, it worked out perfect, which we will take. But if you needed, if this was too small, you'd have to make this seam a little bit narrower. And if there was more side than circle, you'd have to tighten up that seam. It's just, you just have to kind of look at it and adjust it, because fabric can stretch as you're handling it. So you may have measured it and then you get there and maybe it's a little bit bigger than you thought. And that could just be because it got stretched while you were handling it. It's not something you have to be super delicate with. You just need to be aware that that can happen. There you can see I have my base glued on, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which I am using throughout the project, and I am going to stitch this down. And I will repeat that with the lining, and then we'll be back to show you the next step. All right, now you can see we've got our bases sewn into our bags, and I found it much easier to keep the circle on the base of my machine and just rotate it like this, and you go a few stitches, stop, lift your presser foot, rotate, go a little further, stop, rotate. You want to just keep this fabric from the side even so it doesn't pleat as you stitch around. But if you put the circle on the bottom and push this out of your way, you can go all the way around very easily. So we have our outer bag and our lining. Now we're going to turn the outer bag right side out, and we're going to prep this for the drawstring channel. Now this is something you could mark and do before you sew the bottom in, or you can do it after. I tend to do it after because everything is aligned and sewn together. But if you want to, you could do it while this piece was flat. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to measure down from the top 1.5 inches and make a mark, and then 2 inches and make a mark. And how we're going to do that, we're going to take a little ruler, and this is the outer bag that we're working on, and we're going to do 1.5 inches. And this is why I have a chalk pencil, because this is dark and I really want my line to show up so I can see it. And I'm measuring from the top edge down, and then I'm going to rotate some more until I have a 1.5 and a 2 inch line all the way around the bag. Now, if you're using a thicker cord, like this is pretty thin, a 1/2 inch channel is big enough. But if, say, you're using, you know, like a shoelace or something a little bit thicker, you can make that channel more than a 1/2 inch. You can make it 3/4 of an inch, so you have enough room inside the channel to put your drawstring. So you can change this and recreate this however you want. I'm just giving you guidelines of what will work for the one I am showing you. And there we go. We've come back around and I've got it marked. Let's see if I hold this up. Yeah, you can, the camera's picking that up. So you can see it's a 1.5 inch, or it's a 1/2 inch channel, that the base is 2 inches from the top and the top is 1.5. So then what you can do at that point is we need to make an opening for where the cord is going to come into it. So between those two drawn lines, I very carefully take a seam ripper and bring this up so you can see what I'm doing, and I'm just going to pop open the seam from one end to the other. So if you were to mark it at the start, you could just sew up, skip over, and sew down. But now I know everything's aligned, because sometimes when you do that, then things don't match up exactly on the end, but it is really personal preference. So I'm very carefully just opening the seam, which is also why we pressed the seams open on the inside. So now I have a little hole that I can then shove my cords into and have my drawstring. Now you can, if you want to, anchor that top and bottom where we popped it open so it doesn't continue to unstitch. That would not be a bad idea, and you can do that very quickly and easily right now because it's not assembled into the bag. So we're going to open this up. You see where my 1/2 inch is, and what I would do is just mark it on this side so that when I'm at the sewing machine anchoring it, I know exactly where I'm anchoring it. All right, we have our drawstring channel done. We've got our little opening right there. It's been anchored. So we're gonna turn the bag back to right side out. If you want, this would be the time to press this bottom seam and make it nice, sharp, and crisp. On this bag, I did not press it, and I kind of like it. It keeps it looking organic on the bottom. So I am not gonna press mine, but you can choose to do that. All right, now that we have our drawstring channel done, we are ready to assemble our bag. Now, what I did forget to mention earlier is when you sew your lining tube together, make sure you leave a 2 to 3 inch opening in the side seam, not the bottom, so you can turn the bag right side out. That is an important piece. Now, we're gonna keep the lining going wrong sides out and the outer bag right sides out, and we're going to put the 2 sides together. We're just going to slide this bag inside here, and we're going to align the side seams. I think that just gives you a much nicer finished bag. We're going to make sure that when we stitch the 2 pieces together that this seam is laying open on both sides. That will make the drawstring assembly much easier. And so I usually start with that seam. I will align those, and then I'm going to put a wonder clip there to hold everything the way I want it. And then I'm going to work my way around and clip this top edge. We're going to then sew a 1/4 inch away from the top, and our bag unit will be ready to turn right side out. All right, so I stitched that opening closed so nothing would fall in between the lining and the bag. And then we can pop our lining inside. We're almost there. And I'm going to take this over to the iron, and I'm going to press this top edge, and then I'm going to top stitch it. Then after I've top stitched that edge, I'm going to come down here on these chalk lines and stitch the channel for the drawstring. So you want to make sure you're stitching that through the lining and the bag. So I've done the 3 rows of stitching. I did the top stitch along the edge, and then I did the 2 lines that I had drawn earlier for the drawstring channel. The next step is to put our drawstring into our dice bag, and how we do that is with, like I said, I like using a little safety pin. This is a diaper safety pin, so I like this little head to kind of feed it through. I take the safety pin. This stuff can be very slippery, so I lay it on the table on my cutting mat and I pierce it with the safety pin instead of trying to do it in the air, because it is slippery and it will slide, and sure enough you will stab yourself and not the cord. There we go. We got it through. And then we're just going to close this, and now I can use this hard part, and I'm going to finagle it again, make sure it doesn't get caught on the seam fabric on the inside. And once I see the pin, there it is, it's coming through. And voila, we've got our drawstring in our bag. We also got some extra strings there, and we have these 2 tails. When you're doing this, try not to pull it all the way through, which I have done, and you now can put on this little slide. Now, if anyone knows the name of this piece, put it in the comments below for everybody. So what we're going to do is push the button down, feed both ends of the cords through this hole. There's one. You can do them at the same time, so let me just show you that, because that's a lot easier than what I'm doing. So you get both cords through, and then you depress it and it locks it in place. So what we want to do so it doesn't slide off is I'm going to pull it all the way up to the bag. And I'm just going to do an overhand knot here at the end with my cords. Tie a knot. And now this won't come off, but let's steal the dice from the other bag. There we go. We are ready to load our dice into our bag, and then you're going to pull it tight. You depress the button, slide it all the way up and it'll lock it in place. And then this becomes your handle. And we now have an adorable dice bag. So I hope you've enjoyed making this guy. It was a little bit more finagly because you have to do a circle bottom. If the circle bottom scares you, you could do a square bottom, but I always think these look really, really cute. Now I've got two of them. Now I've got two of them as gifts. I can use other fabrics and make it for jewelry or small toys or all kinds of little secret things. But I thought with the Mystic Dragons, it was a perfect little dice bag. So now let's move on to the easy project, which is the journal cover. Now that we have the dice bag done, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to take a sip of iced tea and show off the matching cup cozy we did in the previous YouTube video. There's a whole tutorial on how to make these, but I did make it out of the same dragon fabric. This is the green colorway and this is the blue. And again, this is Mystic Dragons from Michael Miller. Perfect for all of your dragon lovers. All right. Enough drinking on the job, let's get going. So we have a journal cover we're going to make next, and I'm going to show you how to make this with whatever size journal you have, meaning you can make little ones, big ones, it does not matter. So let's get started. So for this one, we used the emerald green dragons and medallions, and the medallions on the inside. For the tutorial though, we are going to use one of my favorite pieces from the collection, which is this beautiful dragon print. They're much bigger, they're much more detail of the dragons, and they're sitting there with the crescent moons, and they are ready to be my journal cover. And then on the inside we went with the same medallions, but this time we went with the dark royal blue colorway versus the green colorway. So you will need to cut two pieces of this, and I'm going to tell you how to do that in a minute, what size. You will need two pieces for the inside flaps from the lining, and you will need two pieces of the outer fabric as well. So how do we measure all of these pieces? First things first is you find your journal. For me, and today we have a lovely composition notebook I picked up at a dollar store, well, $1.25 store. It does tell you the measurements of the sheets. I'm not going to follow those. I'm going to actually measure it myself. So what you want to do is you want to open up your journal to this so it's laying nice and flat, and you can measure it on your table. So this one, when it's open flat, is about 15 inches. And we're going to round up, so it's a little bit smaller. We're going to round up to 10. So this measures in the open position 10 by 15. What I'm going to do then is add 1.5 inches to both dimensions. So I need to cut my pieces 11.5 by 16.5 for the big pieces. These pieces right here. Okay. So that's 16.5. And that's 11.5. So we have one for the inside of the book cover and one for the outside of the book cover. Now we need these little flat parts in here to slide our cover in to hold it all in place. I'm going to decide arbitrarily because I think it's a nice measurement, 4.5 inch wide, but then you have to cut it the 11.5 inch long, and you will need 2 for each side. So I cut 2 from the lining and 2 from the outer fabric. So that is all the pieces you need to do the cover. The other thing is I do like to add a piece of batting inside just to give it a little bit of weight, a little bit of strength. And give it some substance. You could use an interfacing if you so choose, but I do just like the way a lightweight batting feels in that. So how do we make this together? We are going to first, we know this is our outside. We know this is our inside. So we need to make our flaps first. And I have to decide, do I want the dragons showing on the inside, so the cover looks like it's wrapped in, or do I want the flaps to match the inside and just disappear? This one, we did it so it disappears. Let me pull this out for you to see. So it just disappears. So I think on this new one, we're going to do the dragons. So they look like they float all the way inside. So we're going to take these two pieces of fabric, one dragon, one lining. We are going to put them right sides together, and we are going to stitch down one long side, and that's it. So just down this one side, and then we'll do the same thing with this other one. And I am using a 1/4 inch seam allowance through the entire project. All right, now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this open, and I'm going to press this seam so it's nice and finished, and I'm going to run a top stitch down it. But you'll see I only did the one long side. So let me do that step. All right, so we have our 2 flaps done. Now what we're going to do is we are going to take our lining piece. If you have a direction, make sure you have the direction of the lining piece going in the right direction. And I'm going to put the flaps on either side. And I'm going to use an 1/8 inch seam allowance just to baste these to the lining piece so they don't shift while I am trying to assemble the whole cover. So I'm going to take a few binder clips and just clip the edges so I don't have to hold it all. And I'm going to just baste along here, here, and here, down here, and I'm going to use an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now we have our inner part done with the flaps, so we can put the outer part on top. Make sure if you have a way you want this to go, you can put it on there correctly. All right, now that we have sewn all our layers together, leaving an opening for turning, we are ready to turn our notebook cover right side out. And I have this super handy dowel that somebody sanded down for me. I love it for poking out corners. So I'm going to use that to make sure these corners are popped out. All right, so we've got this turned right side out. So what I'm going to do, oh, and isn't that beautiful? I'm going to go over to the iron. I'm going to press everything down. I'm going to fold in this raw edge and give it a quick top stitch all the way around. And then we're ready to put our notebook in. There we go, it is all top stitched. We've got our inside and our outside. Now you could add a pen tab on here, you could add pockets in there, but we are ready to put our notebook in our cover. So here we go. We're gonna just take our notebook. The first side is easy, you just slide it in to the edge. And then the second one, what you do is you open it up like a tent, and then that'll slide in. So you have to pull it. Let's show you from the side here. So obviously you can slide this one in, and then this one, if you just pull it open like that, then it slides right in. There we go. We have ourselves a stunning dragon notebook cover. So there's the inside. I really do like having the dragons wrap around, and then you have the medallions peeking out. But by doing it 1.5 inches bigger, you have a little more room in case you get a little bit larger notebook. Where this one we only did 1 inch bigger, and it's much snugger, and it kind of, it is a snugger fit, but I like it a little bit looser so it doesn't actually bend or warp the cover. So you can choose whether you want to do 1 inch, 1 inch, or 1.5, but either size will work. So now we have some beautiful dragon covers. We have our matching dice bag that you can keep all your dice in. And if you go back and watch the cup hugger video, you can make a cup hugger that matches it as well. So I hope you have enjoyed this video tutorial on how to make a dice bag and journal cover. As always, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the bell to be notified, and leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about this project, or if you have ideas for other things you'd like to see in these videos. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!